Welcome, Namaste, and Aloha. Today we will address a special question. Does the Bhagavatam speak about the appearance of Lord Buddha in Kali-yuga? And if it does, what does that tell us about the relationship between Buddhism and the older Vedic traditions of India? This is a question that deserves both conviction and care. The Bhagavatam gives a clear Vaisnava theological account. Buddhist traditions preserve their own scriptures, their own practices, and their own understanding of the Buddha. History asks a different kind of question. How did Buddhism emerge in ancient India? These are not enemies. They are different lenses. If we keep them distinct, we can learn from all of them without distorting any of them. The central Bhagavatam passage is First Canto, Chapter 3, Text 24. In Sanskrit it says, Tata kalau sampravrte samohaya suradvisam buddho namnan jana sutta kikatesu bhavishyati. The Vedas translation reads, Then, in the beginning of Kali-yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theist. This verse is striking because it gives four specific markers. It speaks of Kali-yuga. It gives the name Buddha. It identifies the mother as Anjana. And it places the appearance in Kikata, understood in the Vedas translation as the province of Gaya in Bihar. For a devotee reading the Bhagavatam, this is not a casual mention. It is part of the great catalogue of divine appearances, the chapter that declares Krishna to be the source of all incarnations. But the verse also uses a difficult word, samoha, often translated here as deluding or bewildering. What could that mean? Does it mean that Buddha came to confuse sincere seekers? The Vedas Vaisnava explanation gives a very particular answer. It says that the people of that period had turned religious language into an excuse for violence. Animal killing was being defended in the name of sacrifice. So the Lord appeared as Buddha and emphasized Ahimsa, nonviolence, in a form that could interrupt the cruelty. The point is not that the Vedas themselves endorse casual violence. The point in this interpretation is that sacred words can be misused by people who have lost the sacred purpose. Any tradition can experience this danger. A ritual can survive while compassion disappears. A scripture can be quoted while its heart is ignored. A religious identity can become loud while the vulnerable are forgotten. The Bhagavatam's Buddha passage is therefore not only about the past, it is a warning to every generation. Do not use religion to sanctify what religion came to heal. The Vedas translation to this verse explains Buddha's mission as mercy toward animals and as a moral discipline for people who had lost faith in God but could still respond to compassion and nonviolence. In that Vaisnava reading, Buddha's outward challenge to Vedic authority is not viewed as hostility to the divine. It is understood as a compassionate strategy, a medicine given in the language the patient is willing to hear. Whether one accepts that theological conclusion or not, the ethical challenge is unmistakable. If your spirituality does not make you more careful with life, more sensitive to suffering, and less willing to turn power into cruelty, then something essential has been lost. The Bhagavatam gives supporting passages. In the 11th Canto, Chapter 4, Text 22, the Lord is described as appearing as Buddha to bewilder unworthy performers of Vedic sacrifices. Again, the focus is not sincere worship, the focus is the unworthy use of ritual. In the 7th chapter of the 2nd Canto, Text 37, there is another Buddha reference following Jiva Goswami, carefully says that this passage concerns a different Buddha appearance in another Kali-yuga. That matters. We should not force every use of the name Buddha into one single historical event. So what does the Bhagavatam actually claim? Within its Vaisnava theological vision, it presents Buddha as a divine appearance connected with Kali-yuga and with the correction of abused sacrifice. It does not give a modern academic history of Buddhist institutions. It does not provide a complete biography of Siddhartha Gautama. It does not say in so many words that Buddhism was simply created from something called Hinduism. Those are later questions, and they need later kinds of evidence. Now let us turn to history. Buddhism arose in ancient India, in a world where Brahmanical and Vedic traditions were influential, but where there were also many seekers, renunciants, teachers, and philosophical movements. This was a dynamic intellectual landscape. People were wrestling with karma, rebirth, liberation, suffering, meditation, discipline, sacrifice, social hierarchy, and the purpose of human life. For that reason, it is both true and incomplete to say Buddhism was born from Hinduism. It is true in the limited sense that Buddhism emerged from the shared civilizational soil of ancient India, a soil in which Vedic and Brahmanical traditions were deeply present. Buddhism speaks an Indian religious language. It arose amid Indian questions. It shared a world of karma, rebirth, ascetic practice, meditation, and the search for freedom. But it is incomplete because the word Hinduism is a broad modern umbrella. In the Buddha's historical setting, it is more precise to speak of Brahmanical and Vedic traditions alongside the wider Shramana world, communities of wandering renunciants and spiritual experimenters. Buddhism did not simply become a small branch on a pre-existing tree. It developed its own teachings, its own monastic communities, its own scriptures, and its own path. This is why we can say something more accurate and more beautiful. Buddhism emerged in ancient India in dialogue with Brahmanical and Vedic traditions, while also becoming an independent spiritual tradition in its own right. Buddhist traditions preserve the Tipitaka or Tripitaka, the three baskets of their sacred canon. Their central concern is freedom from suffering. They emphasize ethics, meditation, wisdom, compassion, nonviolence, and the path to liberation. The Buddha's teaching is not merely a historical footnote inside another religion. It is a living path followed by millions of people across the world. And here we must be respectful. Many Buddhists do not identify as Hindu. Many Buddhists do not accept the claim that the Buddha is an incarnation of Vishnu. A faithful Vaisnava is free to hold the Bhagavatam's Avatara teaching with full devotion. But a faithful educator must not pretend that every Buddhist tradition sees itself through that same lens. Respect does not weaken conviction, it makes conviction trustworthy. So where do the traditions meet? They meet in the Indian search for liberation. They meet in the disciplined training of the mind. They meet in the recognition that greed, anger, and ignorance distort human life. They meet in the conviction that conduct matters, that what we do to other beings matters. They meet in the serious question of how one becomes free from suffering and bondage. But they are not identical. The Bhagavatam's Vaisnava vision is deeply personal and devotional. It presents the ultimate reality as the supreme person and the goal as loving service to the Lord. Buddhist traditions, in their many forms, develop their own teachings about suffering, impermanence, not self, awakening, and nirvana. We honor the common ground best when we do not erase the real differences. There is a modern scientific parallel here. In ecology, a forest is not created by one tree giving birth to every other tree. A forest is an ecosystem. Its plants share soil, water, sunlight, microorganisms, weather, and deep interdependence. Yet each species remains distinct. An oak is not a pine. A river birch is not a cedar. They may share the same landscape, influence one another, and even make one another possible, but they are not the same organism. Ancient India was like that spiritual forest. Brahmanical traditions, Buddhist communities, Jain communities, yogic paths, ascetic teachers, and many other currents shared a landscape of questions and practices. They influenced one another, they debated, they borrowed language, they offered competing answers. The shared soil was real, the differences were real too. The practical application is immediate. We live in a time when people want simple labels. This came from that. This tradition is really just that tradition. These people are completely separate. Those people have nothing in common. But truth is often more mature than a slogan. The wise person can hold two truths together. Buddhism has deep roots in the religious world of ancient India. Buddhism is also an independent tradition with its own living voice. The Bhagavatam offers a powerful Vaisnava interpretation of Buddha. Buddhist traditions offer their own understanding of the Buddha and the Dhamma. When we can hold both truths, we become less defensive and more intelligent. We stop using religion as a weapon of ownership. We start using it as a doorway to deeper character. For young people, this matters especially. You will inherit a world where people use identity as a battlefield. You will be told that to respect another tradition means you must weaken your own. That is not true. You can be rooted and open. You can love Krishna deeply and still speak accurately about Buddhism. You can honor the Bhagavatam's teaching about Buddha while also recognizing that a Buddhist classmate or neighbor may describe their faith differently. That is not compromise, that is maturity. It is the difference between a fragile identity that needs to dominate others and a living identity that can meet the world without fear. Study your own tradition seriously, know its sources, learn its language, but do not repeat claims just because they sound powerful. Ask, is this what the text actually says? Is this how another community understands itself? Can I speak the truth with both courage and kindness? For those in the older generation, this chapter of history offers a related lesson. Institutions can preserve forms long after they have forgotten their purpose. The Bhagavatam's Vaisnava account of Buddha is centered on exactly this danger, ritual severed from compassion. The question is not only what our ancestors did, the question is whether we are doing the same thing in subtler ways today. Do we preserve ceremonies but neglect mercy? Do we speak of Dharma while treating workers, animals, family members, or strangers without dignity? Do we insist on being right while refusing to become kind? An elder's greatest gift is not merely passing down rituals, it is passing down the heart that gives ritual its meaning. The Buddha passage calls us back to Ahimsa, not as a fashionable word, not as a slogan, as a discipline of seeing life as worthy of care. In the Bhagavatam's devotional reading, this compassion is not separate from God consciousness. It is one of its first tests. So was Buddha predicted in the Srimad Bhagavatam? The Bhagavatam's answer is yes. First Canto, Chapter 3, Text 24 gives a named Buddha appearance in Kali-yuga connected with Anjana and Gaya. Was Buddhism simply born from Hinduism? The most responsible answer is more nuanced. Buddhism arose in ancient India in deep dialogue with Brahmanical and Vedic traditions and the wider Shramana world. It shared a landscape, but it became an independent path. And what can we carry forward from both the Bhagavatam's message and the historical record? Never use sacred authority to protect cruelty. Never confuse inherited form with living compassion. Never mistake respect for weakness, and never fear truth simply because it is more complex than a slogan. Thank you for joining us for this special exploration of Buddha, Ahimsa, and Kali-yuga in the timeless wisdom of Srimad Bhagavatam. May our study make us more truthful, more compassionate, and more humble. May we be firmly rooted in our own path while honoring the sincere search for freedom in others. Thanks, Namaste, and Mahalo for joining us on this journey through the timeless wisdom of Srimad Bhagavatam.